"Show me that tattoo!" the mobster shouted, his voice cutting through the basement's thick silence like a blade through flesh. Marco Lombardi grabbed Dante's arm with bruising force, his fingers digging deep into muscle as he twisted it violently under the single bulb's harsh light. The ink revealed itself slowly, a delicate rose intertwined with a broken chain, the lines faded by years but unmistakable, the shading still visible despite decades of sun exposure and aging skin. Marco's face drained of every trace of color, his olive complexion turning ashen gray. His hand trembled as he traced the design with his fingertip, disbelief warring with impossible recognition in his dark eyes. Impossible. That mark was my mother's. Dante jerked his arm away violently, stumbling backward until his shoulders hit the cold concrete wall with a painful thud. His breath came in sharp, ragged bursts that echoed in the confined space. They stood in the damp basement of a Brooklyn warehouse near the waterfront, surrounded by wooden crates that reeked of salt water, rust, and decades of forgotten cargo. A single exposed bulb swung slightly overhead, casting dancing shadows across their faces and the cracked walls. This was supposed to be a simple interrogation. Dante had been caught selling cocaine on Lombardy territory without permission, without paying tribute, without even acknowledging whose streets he was working. Marco's soldiers had grabbed him off a Williamsburg corner 3 hours ago, thrown a hood over his head, and driven him here for what should have been a straightforward conversation about respect and consequences. But now everything had shifted into territory neither man could have possibly anticipated. Before we continue with this intense moment, I want to ask you something. Hit that subscribe button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from viewers all over the world. Now let's dive back into this mystery that's about to change everything. Your mother. Dante's voice came out hoarse and raw. What the hell are you talking about? What does your mother have to do with any of this? Marco backed away slowly, the gun in his hand trembling visibly, his finger hovering dangerously over the trigger while his mind raced through impossible connections. That exact tattoo. My mother had it on her wrist. Same design, same placement, same size. She got it when she was 17 back in Naples before she came to America. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. She died when I was 8 years old. Car accident on the BQE, they said. But I remember that rose, those broken chains. I used to trace it with my finger when I was a kid, sitting on her lap, and she'd tell me it meant freedom from the past. Dante stared at his own wrist, as if seeing the tattoo for the first time, his expression shifting from defensive anger to bewildered confusion. My mother had this exact same design. She made me promise to get it when I turned 18, said it was important, that it was our family mark. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. She called it our inheritance, never explained why. The basement felt colder suddenly. Marco's lieutenant, Sal Benedetto, a thick-shouldered man with graying hair and a face scarred by 4 decades of street violence, shifted uncomfortably by the steel door. "Boss, what do you want me to do with him?" "Nothing. Get out." Marco's words were clipped and final. "Now, Sal." Sal hesitated, glanced between the 2 men, then climbed the wooden stairs without another word. The door closed with a heavy thud, leaving them alone. Marco lowered the gun completely, setting it on a crate. He ran both hands through his dark hair, disrupting the careful style. "My mother was Isabella Russo before she married, came from Naples in 1985, married my father Vincent Lombardi exactly 1 year later. My mother was Rosa Russo, also from Naples, also the 80s. Dante touched the tattoo again. She raised me completely alone in Sunset Park. Never mentioned my father, never explained where she came from. Just said the past was dangerous and we needed to stay hidden." Marco pulled out his phone, scrolling to an old photograph. his mother in 1986, standing outside a Brooklyn apartment, smiling. He turned the screen toward Dante. Dante's reaction was immediate. His face went pale as he stared at the woman in the photograph. She looks exactly like my mother. Same eyes, same mouth, same everything. He fumbled for his own phone, pulling up a worn picture of Rosa from her hospital bed 3 years ago. Despite the illness and years, the resemblance was undeniable. Marco studied Rosa's image, his heart hammering. These women could have been twins. What was your mother's maiden name? She never told me, said Russo was all I needed to know. Same with mine. Marco sat heavily on a crate. 2 women, identical tattoos, same last name, same city, same arrival year, looking like twins. They had to be sisters. But why the different lives? Why did your mother marry into the Lombardis while mine hid in poverty? Why didn't they ever contact each other? Maybe they couldn't. Marco's voice hardened. The Lombardis have been running Brooklyn for 40 years. That kind of power comes with enemies. Growing up, I watched my father navigate constant threats. He paused. My mother died July 14th, 2001. Brake failure on the BQE. But I remember my father's face at the funeral. He didn't look sad. He looked furious. Later, I wondered if someone had killed her to send a message. Dante moved closer. So what are you saying? I'm saying if Isabella and Rosa were sisters, and Rosa spent her whole life hiding, maybe they were both running from something. And maybe only one of them made it into protection. What kind of threat makes 2 sisters abandon each other for decades? The kind that kills you if you're found. The bulb flickered. Both men tensed before it steadied. So what happens now? Dante asked carefully. Your Lombardi family. I'm nobody. I was caught on your territory. The tattoo changes everything. If our mothers were sisters, you're my cousin. Your blood. And family complicates everything. Does it? I've been on my own my entire life. My mother worked 2 jobs just to keep us fed. I started selling at 16 to pay her medical bills. Marco studied him carefully. What if we figure this out together? Find out why they came to America, why they separated. Someone has to remember. And if we find out they wanted nothing to do with each other, then we deal with that. Marco pocketed the gun's magazine separately. But right now, with matching tattoos and mothers who look like twins, I need answers, don't you? Dante's shoulders dropped. Yeah, I spent 3 years after she died, wishing I'd asked more questions. Then we start digging. You'll stay low for a few days while I talk to the old-timers. Marco pulled out a business card. 3 days. I'll have something by then. As Dante disappeared into Brooklyn's twilight, Marco felt the ground shift beneath everything he'd built his life upon. If his mother had hidden a sister, what else had been concealed? 3 days felt like 3 weeks. Marco spent every moment between obligations, tracking down anyone who might remember 1985. He started with his uncle Carmine, meeting at Café Palermo in Bensonhurst. Carmine was 64. White hair combed back, hands trembling from decades of smoking. You're asking about ancient history, Marco. Why now? Because I need to understand who she was before marriage. Marco kept his tone measured. Did she have family? Did anyone come to the wedding? Carmine's eyes narrowed. Your father met Isabella at a social club. She was working as a seamstress, living in a tiny Lower East Side apartment. Beautiful girl, very quiet. Vincent fell hard. He sipped his espresso. As for family, she said they were all dead. Car accident in Naples. No one came to the wedding. Did you believe her? The question hung between them. Carmine set down his cup carefully. Why wouldn't I? Because I think she was lying. I think she had a sister here in New York, and they were hiding from something. Marco pulled out both photographs. Because I found someone with a mother who looked exactly like mine. Same tattoo, same name, same city, same year. Carmine studied the images, his face growing troubled. After a long silence, "Your father knew." The words hit like a physical blow. What? Vincent knew. Isabella had a sister, Rosa. They came to New York together, both running from something in Naples. Vincent found out about a month after they married. Isabella confessed everything one night. Marco's hands clenched into fists. "And he never told me. They were protecting you, and protecting Rosa." Carmine leaned forward, voice dropping. "The sisters witnessed a murder in Naples, a Camorra execution. They testified against the Di Loro clan. That marked them for death. Italian authorities smuggled them to America, but they couldn't stay together. Too easy to track. Isabella married Vincent for protection. Rosa went underground. And my mother's death wasn't an accident. The Camorra found her in 2001. Vincent always suspected they cut her brake lines." Cold fury built in Marco's chest. 24 years he'd believed it was random chance. Does Rosa know Isabella's dead? I don't know. Vincent became different after your mother died. Harder, more paranoid. He died 8 years later, never having resolved it. I need an address. Carmine pulled out a worn notebook, tore out a page. This was Rosa's last known address from 5 years ago. It's all I have. Deal. The next morning, Marco found Dante outside his Sunset Park building at 7:15. Dante emerged carrying coffee, wearing a jacket too thin for the cold. Marco crossed the street. "We need to talk." Dante spun around, hand reaching for his pocket before recognizing Marco. "Jesus, you trying to give me a heart attack?" "Sorry, but I found answers." Marco stood at a respectful distance. "Your mother, Rosa, she was Isabella's sister. They came from Naples together, both running from the Camorra. They witnessed a murder and testified against the Di Loro clan. That's why Rosa stayed hidden your entire life." Dante's face went pale. He set his coffee down with shaking hands. "The Camorra? Are you serious?" "My uncle Carmine confirmed everything. They testified, and the Di Loros marked them for death. Authorities helped them escape to America, but they had to separate." Marco's voice was steady. "And my mother's death wasn't an accident. It was retaliation." Dante leaned against the wall, looking sick. "My mother never told me any of this. She said we were hiding from immigration problems. She was protecting you from the truth. If you'd known about the Camorra, you might have acted differently, drawn attention." Marco stepped closer. "But now you know, and now we deal with it together. You're not alone anymore. You're family. And in my world, family means protection. You're offering to bring me into the Lombardis? After 3 days. I'm offering to acknowledge you as my cousin. What happens after, we figure out together." Marco pulled out keys. "First thing, you're moving. This address was in my uncle's records, which means it might be in other records. Too exposed. I have a place in Bay Ridge that's secure. I can't just leave. You can and will. If the Camorra is still active, this location is dangerous." Marco's tone left no room for argument. "Pack what matters. 1 hour. Dante stared at him, then nodded. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I grew up with everything you should have had. Because our mothers sacrificed their relationship to survive, and that sacrifice shouldn't extend to us." Marco's expression softened. "And because I looked into your background, you kept yourself clean despite circumstances. That tells me who you are." 55 minutes later, Dante emerged with 2 duffel bags and a backpack. Everything he owned fit in 3 pieces of luggage. As they drove through Brooklyn, Marco explained the rules. "The Bay Ridge place is under a shell corporation. You'll have security, but discreet. Keep your head down while I figure out what threat we're facing. And after that? After that, we decide if you want in or out. Either way, you'll be protected. What if I want in? Then we start training you. Legitimate fronts first, learning how everything operates. You'd need to prove yourself. Having my backing helps, but it doesn't replace the work. I'm not afraid of work. Good, because what's coming won't be easy. I'm going to find out everything about Naples, who our mothers testified against, whether those people are still active, what threat exists, and then I'm going to handle it permanently. The Bay Ridge apartment was spacious and modern, far beyond anything Dante had experienced. As Marco showed him around, Dante kept looking at everything with barely concealed amazement. "This is too much," he said. "This is what family gets." Marco checked his phone. "I'm meeting someone tonight who specializes in international research, tracking old Camorra connections. I want you there." "Why?" "Because this is your history too. You have a right to know." Marco checked his watch. "Meetings at 9 in Manhattan. Dress nice, but not flashy. And from now on, assume people are watching." Dante's jaw set with determination. "Let them watch. I've been invisible my whole life. Maybe it's time people knew I exist." That evening they met Elena Marchetti at a private room in an upscale Italian restaurant. Elena was mid-40s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd laid out folders before they arrived. "The Russo sisters," Elena began. "Isabella and Rosa. Born in Naples in 1959, twins grew up in Quartieri Spagnoli, working-class neighborhood controlled by the Di Lauro Camorra clan." She opened the first folder with photographs. In 1984, they witnessed the murder of Antonio Esposito, their cousin. He was killed by Giovanni Di Lauro's lieutenant in broad daylight. Isabella and Rosa were working at a cafe next door and saw everything. Dante leaned forward. "Why did they testify? Everyone knows you don't talk about Camorra business." "Because Antonio was like a brother to them. Family loyalty overrode neighborhood code." Elena's voice was matter-of-fact. "Their testimony convicted 3 Di Lauro members. The organization issued death sentences immediately." She showed immigration documents. Italian police moved them into protective custody, but there were 3 attempts on their lives within 2 months. The authorities decided extraction from Italy was the only solution. They came to New York with cleaned identities, but they couldn't stay together, too easy to track. So Isabella married into the Lombardis for protection, and Rosa disappeared completely. "How do you know all this?" Dante's skepticism was evident. Elena smiled. "I used to work FBI organized crime. When I went private, I kept my contacts and access. The Russo case is buried under classification, but the information is findable if you know where to look." Marco appreciated her thoroughness. "Current status of the Di Lauro clan?" "Giovanni died in 2003. His son Cosimo took over parts of the operation but is currently in prison serving life. However, the younger brother Paolo runs what's left from Barcelona. He coordinates drug trafficking across the Mediterranean and, according to sources, still maintains his father's vendetta list." Elena looked directly at Marco. "Your mother's murder in 2001 was almost certainly Di Lauro retaliation." The confirmation hit hard. Marco's voice was tight. "And Rosa?" "No evidence they ever found her. Rosa stayed completely off the grid. No official employment, no bank accounts, no paper trail. She was a ghost." Elena glanced at Dante. "Your mother was smarter than most. She survived decades by being invisible." Dante's expression was complex. "She died 3 years ago. Cancer. She could barely afford treatment. I'm sorry, but her caution kept you alive. If the Di Lauros had found Rosa, they would have killed both of you." Marco stood, walking to the window. So, Paulo Di Lauro in Barcelona, still running operations, maintaining vendettas. What are the odds he knows about Dante? If Dante stayed under the radar, probably zero. But the moment you publicly acknowledge him, you'll draw attention. The Di Lauros have informants everywhere. Then we don't wait for them to find us. Marco turned back. We go to Barcelona. We meet Paulo. And we end this. Dante's eyes widened. You want to walk into Di Lauro territory. I want to make it clear that pursuing this vendetta costs more than it's worth. The Lombardis have allies the Di Lauros need. We have leverage. Elena nodded slowly. It could work. The modern Camorra respects power and pragmatism. If you approach correctly, position it as business, Paulo might close the books. Or he might see it as opportunity to finish what his father started, Dante said. Which is why we prepare for both. Marco sat back down. Elena, I need detailed intelligence on Paulo. His operations, vulnerabilities, business priorities, everything that gives us leverage. That'll take time and money. You'll have both. I need it within a week. Elena gathered her folders. Understand what you're proposing. This isn't just about you and Dante. If negotiations go wrong, you could trigger war between New York and Barcelona that spreads across multiple families. I understand the risks, but I won't live with this hanging over us. Marco's determination was absolute. We end this now, on our terms. After Elena left, Marco and Dante remained in the dining room. Your mother was brave, Marco said quietly. Testifying against the Camorra took incredible courage. So was yours, living with that target, never seeing her sister again. They sat in silence, two men connected by blood just discovered, shaped by circumstances neither controlled. If we do this, if we go to Barcelona, there's no guarantee we both come back, Dante stated. I know. And you're still willing? For someone you just met? Marco met his eyes. You're not someone I just met. You're family. Time to prove that means something. Dante extended his hand. Marco gripped it firmly. Over the following week, Marco maintained regular duties while preparing for Barcelona. He met with trusted people, arranged for operations to continue in his absence, positioned everything to run smoothly without him. Dante received intensive training from Sal and other veterans, not just combat, but how the organization functioned, how power flowed, how money moved, how negotiations worked, how respect was earned. You've got good instincts, Sal told him, but you think like a street dealer, not someone managing territory. Different scale, different rules. So teach me. No, sir. Rule 1. Power comes from respect, respect from results, results from discipline. Everything you do reflects on Marco. You screw up, it's not just you who pays. Dante absorbed this, understanding that joining the Lombardis meant responsibility far beyond his previous life. Elena delivered her intelligence 6 days later in Staten Island. The dossier on Paulo was comprehensive, nearly 200 pages. Paulo's operation is strong but not impregnable, Elena explained. He's been having disputes with the 'Ndrangheta over Calabria territory. Those disputes are costing him money and manpower. He needs allies more than old vendettas. Perfect timing, Marco said. Maybe, but understand Paulo's psychology. He's not like his father. Giovanni was old-school traditionalist. Paulo's more pragmatic, more business-focused, but he's trying to prove himself to the old guard. If he perceives your approach as weakness, he'll exploit it. So we approach from strength, not supplication. Exactly. You're offering mutually beneficial business, not begging for mercy. What's his relationship with New York families? Minimal direct contact, but he uses New York ports for trafficking. The Genovese family has been his primary contact. If you could get them to endorse your negotiation, it would strengthen your position. I'll make that happen. When's best to approach him? His annual business conference in Barcelona, October 22nd. Several major players attend. If you can get invited, you'll have a neutral setting with witnesses. Can you get us in? Elena smiled. For the right price, I can get you anything. Marco left, knowing the path was dangerous but clear. He needed Genevieve's support, invitations to Barcelona, then negotiate a deal ending the vendetta. That night, he laid out the plan for Dante. We leave in 10 days. Between now and then, you need to be ready for anything. Negotiations, violence, betrayal. These people don't respect weakness and don't forgive mistakes. Dante nodded seriously. I understand. Do you? Because once we walk into that conference, we're all in. No backing out if things go bad. We finish this or we don't come home. I spent my whole life wondering why we were hiding. Now I know. And I'm tired of living in fear of something that happened before I was born. Dante's voice was firm. Whatever it takes, I'm ready. Marco saw genuine determination and recognized it as real. This was Dante's chance to honor Rosa's memory by finishing what she'd started. The next 10 days passed in intensive preparation. Marco negotiated with the Genovese family, securing their support in exchange for future considerations. Elena got them Barcelona invitations as representatives of Anderson Maritime Consulting. Marco also ensured succession plans if he didn't return. Carmine would assume temporary leadership. The day before departure, Marco took Dante to Isabella's grave at Greenwood Cemetery. They walked through sections of old monuments until they reached the modest stone. Isabella Lombardi, Dante read quietly. Beloved wife and mother. She never saw her sister again. No. And Rosa lived knowing Isabella was protected but unable to contact her. Marco's voice was heavy. They sacrificed their relationship to survive. I wish they could have known each other's children. I wish we'd grown up as cousins. So do I. But we can't change the past. We can only shape what comes next. Marco placed his hand on the headstone. Tomorrow we face the people who killed her, and we end this. They flew to Barcelona, landing at El Prat Airport in late afternoon. A car waited, driving them to the Gothic Quarter where the conference was held in a renovated historical building. The conference was a strange hybrid of legitimate business and criminal coordination. Dozens of well-dressed people circulated, discussing shipping routes in terms applying equally to legal goods or narcotics. Paolo Di Lauro appeared on the second day with an entourage. He was shorter than photographs suggested, but carried himself with absolute confidence. His eyes constantly assessed threats and opportunities. Marco waited for the right moment, approaching during a networking session. Mr. Di Lauro, I'm Marco Lombardi from New York. I was hoping we might discuss a mutual interest. Paolo's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Lombardi, Brooklyn family? That's right. We have old business that could benefit from resolution. Old business, how old? 1985, Naples, 2 sisters named Russo. The reaction was immediate. Paolo's bodyguards tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But Paolo raised a hand, stopping them. That's very old business. And you came to Barcelona to discuss it. Bold or pragmatic. I understand you're dealing with territorial disputes in Calabria. I understand you need reliable allies for Mediterranean operations. I'm proposing a trade. You officially close the book on the Russo matter, and the Lombardis facilitate connections that make your Calabria problem disappear. Paolo studied Marco with renewed interest. You do your homework. But why should I trust you can deliver? Because the Lombardis have maintained relationships with the 'Ndrangheta for 40 years, because we can broker peace that benefits everyone. and because continuing a vendetta over 30-year-old testimony serves no purpose except draining resources you could use elsewhere. Your mother's death cost me nothing, Lombardi. It was a message. The casual mention sent rage through Marco, but he kept his expression neutral. And now I'm offering you something worth more than messages. Actual power, territory, profit. That's the difference between living in your father's shadow and building your own legacy. The appeal to Paolo's ego was deliberate. Paolo wanted to be seen as more sophisticated than Giovanni, less constrained by old codes. Paolo was silent for a long moment. Finally, tonight, after session's end, meet me at La Paradeta restaurant in Barceloneta. Come alone, both of you. We'll discuss terms. Both of us? I do my homework too. I know who he is, Rosa Russo's son. If we're closing old books, both bloodlines should be present. Marco and Dante returned to prepare. The invitation could be genuine or a setup. He could kill us the moment we walk in, Dante said. He could, but it would be sloppy, and Paolo's not sloppy. He's curious about what we're offering. That curiosity keeps us alive long enough to negotiate. You're betting our lives on curiosity. I'm betting on the fact that Paolo's tired of being compared to his father and sees us as a path to proving himself different. Marco checked his concealed weapon. But I'm not betting blind. Elena has people watching. If we don't check in by midnight, she triggers actions that make Paolo's Calabria situation 10 times worse. La Paradeta was busy enough for cover, but private enough for serious conversation. Paolo had reserved a corner table with clear sightlines. He was already seated with 2 bodyguards when they arrived. Sit, order something, we'll talk business after. They ordered seafood, maintaining pretense of casual dinner, while tension hummed beneath every word. Finally, after dessert, Paolo leaned back. Now, let's discuss why I shouldn't finish what my father started. Marco laid out the proposal. Complete amnesty for both Dante and himself, officially documented across Camorra operations. In exchange, the Lombardis would broker 'Ndrangheta peace in Calabria, facilitate port access in New York, and establish profit-sharing on Mediterranean routes. You're asking me to forgive blood debt for business advantages, Paolo summarized. That's not how the Camorra traditionally operates. With respect, you're not traditional Camorra. You've spent a decade modernizing operations. This is an opportunity to prove pragmatism beats vengeance. Paolo turned to Dante. And you? Rosa Russo's son, what do you say? Dante met his gaze steadily. My mother spent 30 years in fear because of family loyalty. She watched her sister die from a distance, unable to even attend the funeral. She died never knowing peace. His voice was controlled but passionate. I'm here to make sure that fear ends with her generation. Whatever debts you think exist, they shouldn't extend to people who weren't even born when it happened. Debts of blood extend across generations. That's the principle. That's the excuse for perpetual violence that serves no one except undertakers, Dante shot back. You're a businessman, Mr. Di Lauro. Do the math. What's more valuable, killing us and maintaining a principle, or working with us and expanding your power? The challenge hung in the air. Paolo's bodyguards tensed, but Paolo smiled slightly. You have your mother's courage. She testified knowing it would make her a target. You're sitting here knowing the same. He looked between them. I respect that. So, what's your answer? Marco kept his voice level. Paolo was silent for several seconds. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call in rapid Italian, had a brief, intense conversation. When he hung up, I just spoke with my uncle, my father's brother, last connection to the old guard. He's been pushing to finish the vendetta. And I convinced him that closing this serves our interest better. But there are conditions. Paolo leaned forward. The 'Ndrangheta peace happens within 60 days. Verified. New York port access established same time frame with favorable rates. Profit sharing structured as equal partnership. Done. Marco didn't hesitate. But I need written documentation that the vendetta is officially closed. You'll have it. But understand, if you fail to deliver, the agreement is void. Fair enough. They shook hands, sealing an agreement ending 3 decades of threat. Not friendship, not forgiveness, but resolution. Cold, pragmatic, binding. Walking Barcelona's waterfront afterward, Dante finally breathed deeply. We did it. We survived the negotiation. Now comes delivering on everything I promised. Back in New York, Marco immediately coordinated 'Ndrangheta peace through established channels. Within 3 weeks, he'd brokered territorial agreement, satisfying both Paolo and 'Ndrangheta leadership. Port access was easier. Marco controlled enough waterfront to facilitate what Paolo needed. Dante began real education in family business. Sal showed him legitimate fronts, then gradually the grey areas. Learning fast, Sal said after a month. Better instincts than most. Marco officially brought Dante into the organization in December. This is Dante Russo, my cousin, Isabella Lombardi's nephew. He's family and part of this operation. There were questions from older members, but Marco's position was strong. Dante was in. By spring, the Paolo arrangement was fully operational. Mediterranean routes profited everyone, Calabria peace held, and the Di Lauro organization had formally documented the vendetta's end. One May evening, Marco and Dante visited Isabella's grave together, a monthly ritual now. Think they'd be proud? Dante asked. I think they'd be relieved. They lived with fear we don't carry. And Rosa said broken chains meant freedom. Took years to understand. She wasn't free, but wanted me to be. They wanted better for us. Marco placed flowers. That's what good mothers do. 3 months later, Elena called. Paolo was arrested in Madrid, 20 years minimum. Does that change our agreement? No. Before arrest, Paolo transferred control to a council. They're honoring all agreements. The vendetta closure is permanent. Marco shared the news with Dante over dinner. It's really over, Dante said. It's finished. Marco raised his glass. To Isabella and Rosa, to chains they broke and ones we destroyed. They drank to mothers loved and lost, to family discovered late, but honored deeply. The Lombardi organization continued with Dante as legitimate part. He proved capable, smart, loyal. Sometimes Marco looked at old photographs and wondered what Isabella would think. Would she approve of the risks? He'd never know for certain. But he believed, chose to believe, that Isabella and Rosa knew their sons had succeeded where they'd been forced to fail. The rose and broken chain tattoos remained, but now they meant something different, not escape from the past, but triumph over it. Family had meant hiding, separation, and fear for their mothers. For their sons it meant strength, unity, and freedom. That was the legacy worth carrying forward.